Well, I was looking at Queen Camilla's chart just recently, and I noticed that she's going to be changing planetary periods very shortly here. So I wanted to bring an update to Queen Camilla and what's going on with her astrologically. I haven't done a reading since the coronation. So this will be an important reading just to get an idea where Queen Camilla is astrologically. What could she feeling, what could she be feeling, what could she be going through. That's what we're going to be taking a look at today in today's reading. For those of you that are new to my channel, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get all of my updates. I do readings on the royal family, I do readings on celebrities, I do monthly predictions, and I also do teachings on astrology for those of you that are interested. Just so you're aware, I do Vedic sidereal astrology, not Western tropical astrology. So your sign may be different using the Vedic sidereal zodiac. For the month of July, I'm running a special discount, 40% off. If you use code name Thor at checkout, check down below for details. And you can basically purchase one of those readings and find out what kind of planetary period you are in yourself. So let's go ahead and pull up Queen Camilla's chart. And quick disclaimer, this is for entertainment purposes only. We are just speculating on the astrological energies in Queen Camilla's chart. And also, these are all allegedlys. Okay, so Queen Camilla is a Cancer ascendant in Vedic astrology. The moon is in Gemini. One of the things I wanted to point out is, and I remember this from the last time I saw Queen Camilla's chart, was I really like her chart. You know, sometimes I can look at a chart and immediately I just kind of get this energetic feeling of it. I feel like she's a very pleasant person. Regardless of, the things, especially in the 90s, they really said some mean things about her back then. But I really do feel like she's a very kind hearted, empathic person. Okay. Based on the chart that I'm seeing in front of me. So the moon in the 12th house especially shows somebody that they're very private with their feelings. They're very sensitive with their feelings. She likes to spend time, not necessarily in the public. She likes to be alone, or at least in private enclosures. Remember the 12th house. Remember it means monasteries, spiritual centers, art studios, ashrams. Just being away from the public would definitely be her comfort zone. So this idea of becoming a queen is going to be quite shocking to her, because of this predisposition to want to seek privacy. Let me clean up the chart for a second. Uh, One of the things I want to point out is she's got Saturn in the first house. And Saturn in the first house does create a lot of leadership abilities. It also can make someone seem cold on the outside. So you might be seeing this person, maybe they seem very stern, but it doesn't necessarily mean that inside, you know, she's a very stern person, because the moon is over here in the 12th house. So she's not a stern person, although she might project that and people might see it that way. Because Saturn kind of gives you this, this hardness to you. Maybe you look like, you're not very approachable of a person if someone saw you walking on the street. So I want to point out that right now she's in a Jupiter Bhukti, and that's about to end on July 13th. So that's coming up in just about a week or so. July 13th, Jupiter Bhukti is going to end, and it's going to start Saturn Bhukti. So this is really what we want to focus on, is the Saturn Bhukti and what's going on with that. Since Jupiter's pretty much over, we know that with this Jupiter Bhukti, quite a bit happened. Her husband, King Charles, got coronated. So, I mean, it's a really big deal. Jupiter's in the fourth house of Camilla's chart. And fourth house has to do with homeland. It has to do with home. It's actually generally a pleasant period. Ninth house, there's a sense of grace. There's a sense of reaching this pinnacle of maturity, this pinnacle. Ninth house has to do with like popes, patriarchs, even the church. So King Charles becoming, essentially the leader of the Church of England, that could have to do with it. But also, this could be an important time where she's doing a lot of studying and so forth, in the last couple years here. But let's talk about the Saturn Bhukti, okay? The Saturn Bhukti, which is starting, remember, July 13th. And she's going to be in this Bhukti for about 3 years. This is a rather long Bhukti. Okay. So this is going to be till September 12th, 2026. It's a little over 3 years. Okay. So she's going to be in this period for 3 years. It's a very defining period. Of course, there's going to be transits during this time. So it isn't going to be a monolithic 3 years, but we can still get a lot of information about what this Saturn Bhukti is going to be about. So Saturn, first of all, when we're trying to interpret what this Saturn period is going to be, remember that you always want to look at the karaka nature of the planet. So Saturn is the planet of coldness, it's the planet of old age, it's the planet of seniority, responsibility, hard work, not enough time. So a lot of the unpleasant tasks of life are represented by Saturn. So just know that the feeling of Saturn is that of pressure. So she's going to be under a lot of pressure. She's going to feel like there's not enough time. Okay. And probably she's going to be going to a lot of engagements during this next 3 years. I mean, she's the queen, right? So she's going to be going through lots of engagements, and it's not necessarily enjoyable on her end. Okay. Because Saturn is like doing things out of obligation. Okay. Like I said before, it's not that she's not kind-hearted. She's very kind-hearted. It's just that she's a very private person. Maybe she likes to keep to herself. Maybe she's very sensitive. I even get this idea of being so sensitive. Some people, when they get out into the public, they're very sensitive natures, and the public can be quite a harsh place. You have people shouting things, you have people, have all types of characters out there in the world. And if you don't have a thick skin, it can be quite difficult if you're a celebrity or you're a public figure. So she's definitely feeling obligated to do this, obligated because of her position in the royal family. Notice that Saturn is next to Sun. So and Sun rules the second house. Again, that has to do with family. Okay. So this obligation to shine. But this is interesting. Saturn is kind of oppressing Sun there. So it's almost like she has this obligation to shine, but not shine too much. And this can be kind of one of these situations where, the main focus is on King Charles, probably at a lot of these events. So she's kind of maybe feeling like she's obligated to be there, shine, but kind of just be there as more of a support, is what indicated with Saturn and Sun there. Okay. So not necessarily shining too much there. Okay. Now, Saturn in the first house, I do want to say, if I was giving Queen Camilla an astrological consultation, because Saturn is the eighth lord, this could be one of these situations where she's going to have to really be careful about her health during this time, because this can create a lot of stress. And, eighth house is a very stressful type of planet. So this is putting a lot of stress on her body, on her aura. When people go out into the world, and when you're around the public, it is taking a toll on you psychically. It's taking a toll on your aura. So that's what really we're seeing here. So it's interesting when you see people, public figures, when they have to, be really busy with engagements. For example, you might have noticed, and I'm using a President Obama as an example, but remember when he was president for 8 years and how much he looked like he aged over that 8 years. If you see his face and you saw his hair, it was like the contrast was quite striking. Well, with Queen Camilla, there could be this idea of, over this next 3 years, she might actually, and then I'm not saying she's looking like she's aging, but she might feel like she's aging, okay, quite a bit, just with all these public engagements. It does really take its toll on you. Now, there's going to be a focus during this next 3 years. There is a focus on, the seventh house, which is the marriage. Okay. So obviously she's probably trying to, trying to renegotiate what the marriage is. How do they have this relationship? Maybe they had more private time when it was just Prince Charles, right? Maybe they had more time to be alone. Maybe they had more time. They kind of just show up to the occasional engagement, but they had a lot of time where probably, maybe people weren't around all the time. Now it's like, okay, you're being forced, the relationship with your husband is changing because now he's more of a public figure and maybe there's less privacy there. So that's the difficulty there with Saturn ruling the seventh house. So there's a focus on the marriage and how do we change it? How do we make this marriage? How do we adjust to the new conditions? Also, the eighth house is being highlighted, and keep in mind, transiting Saturn is there. So not only is Saturn Bhukti activating the eighth house, but transiting Saturn is also in the eighth house. And I wanted to talk about this for just a minute here. This really talks about, and I got an itch here, sorry. This transiting Saturn going through your eighth house is really like when you're in a state of shock. There's been a big change in your life. Okay. So Queen Camilla, before King Charles became King Charles, maybe they had a certain routine of life. They had a few engagements they went to, maybe they had their own estate. And now there's this big shock. The queen passed away. And then all of a sudden, King Charles is essentially, I guess it would be a promotion, right? He's coronated. And then there's this big change in your life, and there's this sense of shock. Well, what Saturn's doing is Saturn is actually trying to slow down that sense of shock. So Saturn is like keeping everything in sort of a stasis mode. So right now she might be very emotionally rigid. She might really not know how to, what to make of this time period. There's this sense of shock. There's this sense of rigidness with Saturn going through the eighth house and difficulty. Saturn going through the eighth house, it can represent in-laws, but it can represent like the spouse's family in general. So there could also be a focus. There's just a lot of obligation if we just take the royal family, like in general. Okay. The royal family in general is requiring a lot of obligation, and that's what Saturn going through the eighth house. But there is this idea of shock and transformation. Now, when Saturn reaches the ninth house in March of 2025, that's when things will relax a little bit. There will be a little bit more, okay, I'm getting used to this new cycle of things. I'm getting used to this new life that I'm living. So that's really what's happening there. So that's not going to be till March of 2025 where she's really adapting to this new phase of life. Also, I wanted to point out with some of the transits, we got transiting Rahu in the 10th house there. So there is this public, this idea of being out in the public more. But like I said, Moon is in the 12th. So it's not necessarily well liked. It's not necessarily the best. It's not her comfort zone. So it's a very difficult time. So I want to just let people know that she's going through, in the next week when she enters this Saturn Bhukti, the energy is just going to seem like it's constricting a lot more from her vantage point and her point of view. She's going to feel like there's not a lot of time. She's going to feel like this is really starting to weigh on her, or weigh on her mind, her emotions, even her body in a way. And like I said, she has to be careful about her health during this time because of Saturn being in the first house. I feel like she's going to fulfill her royal family responsibilities quite well. With Saturn in the first house, it does give somebody, they're one tough cookie. Even though she's sensitive, she's tough enough to be able to endure the going through and doing everything that she needs to do. And she's going to fulfill all those obligations. It's just that privately, it might be pretty taxing for her. Let me know what you think. Comment down below. That was just a little quick update on Queen Camilla. I wish her all the best, and King Charles all the best. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.